After we announced my pregnancy, my SIL tried to humiliate me at my husband's party. Her plot backfired, leading to jail and divorce. My sister-in-law handed me a plate of food and acted as though it was a peace offering. Minutes later, her own husband ate from that plate, collapsed in front of the entire family, and was rushed to the hospital. By the time the police became involved, we learned that the food had been deliberately poisoned. The plate had been meant for me. What she intended as one more cruel attempt to punish me eventually cost her freedom, her marriage, and any place she once had in our family. I am 29, and I have been married to my husband Daniel for 7 years. Our marriage has been happy, and Daniel's parents have always treated me warmly. The one constant source of conflict has been his sister, Vanessa. I genuinely liked her at first, and made a real effort because she mattered to Daniel. Over time, I saw that she was manipulative, negative, and deeply possessive of her brother. No matter how carefully I behaved, she found a reason to suggest I did not belong in his life. Long before Daniel met me, Vanessa had tried to involve herself in his relationships. When he was 17, he dated one of her best friends. The relationship ended because Daniel felt pressured to stay with someone, simply because his sister approved of her. Years later, when he was 23 and single again, Vanessa tried to pair him with another friend. Daniel refused, and Vanessa complained to their parents that he should marry someone she already knew and felt comfortable with. His parents did not take that demand seriously, but Vanessa apparently never let go of the idea that she should have a say in the woman her brother chose. While Daniel and I were getting to know each other and falling in love, his parents were supportive. Vanessa was not openly hostile at first, but she was cold in ways that were difficult to miss. Whenever I was around, she found excuses to mention Daniel's ex-girlfriends. She would talk about how well they were doing, wonder aloud whether Daniel had stayed in touch with them, and sometimes suggest that he should contact them. Daniel noticed it too, and repeatedly told her to stop. Instead of respecting that boundary, Vanessa accused me of being jealous and told him he should not be with a woman who was so insecure. She would provoke me, then use my discomfort as proof that I was the problem. Her behavior became more deliberate. When Daniel's parents invited us to dinner, Vanessa occasionally appeared with one of his exes and claimed she had happened to run into her that day. She called it innocent politeness, though the timing was too convenient. She did not follow my public Instagram account, but checked it constantly and was often among the first to view my stories. If a man left a harmless comment, she complained to Daniel that I was posting indecent pictures or seeking attention. Daniel and I sometimes laughed at the absurdity, but I was exhausted by being watched as though she were searching for proof that I was unworthy. When Daniel and I decided to move in together, Vanessa urged him to end the relationship. She told him I had too many flaws and insisted she could find someone much better for him. The comment hurt. I had tried for years to stay on her good side, yet she still treated me like an obstacle she could remove. Daniel rejected her interference, but Vanessa merely changed tactics. Her resentment became impossible to hide when Daniel and I announced our engagement. Everyone else congratulated us, but Vanessa went silent. Then, without saying anything, she stood up and walked out of the gathering. Later, she called Daniel crying and shouting that she should have been told before everyone else because she was the person closest to him. Afterward, she sent me a message that was framed as advice but felt almost like a threat. She told me how I was expected to treat her brother and reminded me that she had always been the only important woman in his life. The message made my skin crawl, so I read it without responding. From that point on, Vanessa alternated between ignoring me and forcing herself into our wedding preparations. She came along for dress shopping and attended my bridal shower, yet she criticized nearly every decision I made. Daniel and his mother challenged her, but she called it honest opinion. One day, while I was discussing centerpieces with my future mother-in-law, Vanessa laughed at my choice and said it had no class. Then she added that this was exactly why she had wanted her brother to marry someone better. That was the moment I finally reached my limit. I told her I could no longer tolerate the constant taunting, insults, and interference, and I said she was no longer invited to the wedding. Vanessa stared as though she had never expected me to challenge her and became furious when her mother supported me. Later, she called Daniel and complained that I had humiliated her. She told him he needed to control me because I was going to be his wife. Daniel made it clear that he supported my decision. He told her she would remain uninvited unless she gave me a sincere apology. Vanessa eventually sent an apology by text. I read it, but did not answer immediately. I was overwhelmed with wedding preparations and had no energy for another argument. In the end, I allowed her to attend, hoping to prevent years of complaints about being excluded. She found another way to make the day about herself. Our wedding colors were soft pinks and pastels. Every guest followed the tone of the event except Vanessa, who arrived in a floor-length black gown with a veil, dressed as though she were attending a funeral. She moved around the reception, telling people how devastated she was to be losing her brother to another woman. Daniel confronted her, but she insisted she had the right to wear whatever she wanted and accused me of being controlling. When she continued making a scene, Daniel's parents finally told her to leave. The display was humiliating and confirmed that Vanessa saw my marriage to Daniel as something taken from her. After that day, I kept my distance. When our son, Ethan, was born, I did not want Vanessa around him. She objected, but Daniel's parents understood why I felt that way and supported our boundary. 2 years ago, however, Vanessa suffered a miscarriage with her boyfriend, Caleb. It was heartbreaking, and despite everything, Daniel and I felt genuine sympathy for her grief. We softened our boundaries and allowed her to spend time in our home and build a relationship with Ethan. At first, she seemed different. She was gentle with our son, and I was surprised by how affectionate and patient she could be with him. For a while, I hoped grief and time had changed her. Gradually, though, her old habits returned. She constantly said life was unfair and blamed former friends, managers, or relatives for ruining things. In every conflict, Vanessa was the victim, and she rarely admitted fault. When Vanessa decided to marry Caleb, she invited nearly the entire family except Daniel and me. We were confused because our relationship with her had seemed to improve. When we asked why, she said she would not allow me at the wedding because she believed I would cause a disturbance. I called her directly and asked what I had ever done to justify that accusation. Vanessa then admitted that she had intentionally worn black to our wedding and said she feared I might retaliate by doing the same thing to her. She was excluding me for an offense she herself had committed while presenting me as the threat. After discussing it with his parents, Daniel told Vanessa that none of them would attend the wedding if I was excluded. His parents also said they would not help pay for it. Vanessa burst into tears and blamed me for destroying her plans. Even Caleb told her she had no right to point at me after admitting that she had deliberately tried to ruin our wedding. Later, Vanessa apologized and asked me to forgive her. Her parents were still refusing to fund the wedding, and she could be remarkably convincing. Wanting to move forward, I accepted the apology. Daniel and I attended the wedding, his parents resumed their support, and the day went smoothly. Less than 6 months later, Vanessa appeared at our door, saying her marriage was falling apart. Daniel and I let her stay with us for several days. She spent hours complaining about Caleb. They were struggling to conceive, and Vanessa blamed him for nearly everything. When she was not criticizing her husband, she watched me and invented suspicions about my life. Most mornings, I went to the gym before work. On days when I was running late, I brought my work clothes with me so I could shower and change before going to the office. Vanessa watched this routine and began asking strange questions. She wanted to know why I needed to shower away from home and why I cared so much about going to the gym. I explained that exercise kept me healthy and that I did not want to arrive at work sweaty. The way she studied me made me uneasy. The reason for those questions became clear during lunch with Daniel's parents. My mother-in-law mentioned a friend who was divorcing after discovering her husband's affair. Before she could finish the story, Vanessa interrupted and asked Daniel whether we had signed a prenuptial agreement. The table went quiet. She looked at her brother as though I were not there. Daniel said no. We both earned good incomes and had never felt one was necessary. Vanessa snorted and warned him that anyone could be blindsided because cheaters were everywhere. I asked her to explain exactly what she meant. She said my habit of carrying extra clothes proved that I was probably meeting another man. According to her, it was her duty as Daniel's sister to warn him. Daniel's parents immediately told her to stop interfering in our marriage and fabricating accusations. Vanessa kept going. She insisted she was only protecting her brother, then joked that perhaps Ethan was not even Daniel's son because he did not look enough like him. I had never seen Daniel so angry. His face went red, and years of frustration came out at once. He told Vanessa that she was shamelessly trying to destroy our family because she was unhappy with her own life. He said she spent her time attacking everyone else while Caleb worked constantly, and he accused her of projecting her marital problems onto us. In the heat of that rage, Daniel also made a cruel remark about her miscarriage. He told her she did not deserve to be a mother, and that the child she had lost was better off in heaven than with someone like her. The room fell silent. Vanessa stared at him, then sobbed and turned toward Caleb, but he said nothing. Daniel stormed away while his mother followed to calm him. I was shaken. Vanessa's attack on my fidelity and our son was unforgivable. But Daniel's comment about her loss was devastating too. Once he had cooled down, he apologized to Caleb for the scene, but he refused to engage with Vanessa. That lunch ended any remaining contact between us. Daniel and I blocked Vanessa and excluded her from our lives. His parents agreed that she had gone too far. They had watched their normally calm son lose control and understood that continued access only gave Vanessa more chances to cause damage. For the next year, we had no contact with her, and our home was peaceful. 2 months before Daniel's birthday, I discovered I was pregnant again. We had not been actively trying, so the news surprised us, but we were thrilled. We decided to wait for the right moment to tell the family, and chose Daniel's birthday celebration because his parents were hosting a large gathering in their backyard. It felt like the right way to honor him and share our happiness. Vanessa was not invited, but she heard about the party through other relatives and arrived anyway. Daniel and I both froze when we saw her. She walked straight to him, hugged him, and said she had missed him and was sorry about their last conversation. Daniel took my hand and told her that apologizing to him was not enough. She had attacked my character, our marriage, and our child, so she owed me an apology too. Vanessa looked at me and said she was sorry. She claimed she had been in therapy for several months and finally understood how inappropriate her behavior had been. I did not trust her, but I wanted no confrontation at Daniel's party, so I remained polite. Daniel's parents quietly checked with us and said they would ask her to leave if we were uncomfortable. Daniel did not want to create a scene in front of everyone, so we agreed to let her stay. For most of the celebration, Vanessa behaved almost unnaturally well. She laughed with relatives and seemed far more cheerful than usual. Because she mentioned therapy, I tried to believe she had changed, though her sudden optimism kept me cautious. When it was time to cut the cake, Daniel gave a short speech. He said he felt like the luckiest man alive because he had been given another year with a wife he loved. His words made me blush. After 7 years, I felt grateful that we were still deeply in love. Then we announced that we were expecting another baby. For a second, everyone was silent as the news registered. Then the backyard erupted. My mother rushed to hug me and began crying. Daniel's father embraced us with tears in his eyes. Relatives asked about names and the baby's sex. Everyone seemed delighted except Vanessa. Her expression changed the moment we made the announcement. She looked stunned, then irritated, and turned away from us. I noticed, but told myself she might be processing her fertility struggles and miscarriage. I was worried she might ruin another family event, but for the moment, she kept quiet. When food was served, I started to get up and help Daniel's parents carry dishes, but my parents and relatives insisted that I stay seated. Daniel went to prepare a plate for me. Before he returned, Vanessa approached with a bright smile and said she wanted to bring me dinner herself because she was so excited about the pregnancy. She handed me a full plate and told me she hoped it could be part of making up for all the times she had treated me badly. I thanked her and accepted it. As she walked away, I looked down and saw shrimp on the plate. I have a serious allergy to shrimp, and Vanessa knew that. At first, I tried to explain it away as carelessness. The gathering was busy, and several dishes had been served. I was disappointed but did not imagine anything worse, so I stood to replace the plate. At that moment, Caleb came over to congratulate me. He noticed I was not eating. I explained that Vanessa had brought shrimp, probably by mistake, and I needed something else. Caleb liked shrimp, so he took the plate from me and said he would eat it rather than let it go to waste. I let him have it, thanked him, and went to prepare another plate. Within minutes, Caleb began gagging and vomiting over the food. Everyone turned as he tried to stand, staggered, and clutched his throat. Daniel and Vanessa rushed toward him. Caleb pointed weakly at the plate before collapsing. Someone called an ambulance while the rest of us stood in panic, trying to understand what had happened. Vanessa examined the plate, then turned to me with a look of shock and demanded to know whether I had given Caleb the food she had brought me. I said yes. Caleb was taken to the hospital. Later, we were told that he had been poisoned. The ground seemed to disappear beneath me. The plate had been meant for me, and the poison could have harmed my unborn baby. At first, only Vanessa and I knew she had personally delivered the plate. Everyone else only knew Caleb had collapsed after eating. The hospital notified the authorities because his condition and the suspected contamination required investigation. Police began collecting information about the food and the people who had handled it. Caleb remained in the hospital recovering, while Vanessa stayed with him overnight. Our relatives kept calling Daniel and me, asking what had happened and whether anyone knew who might have poisoned him. Daniel's parents were so frightened that they stayed at our house rather than return home alone. I was terrified, but I was also consumed by guilt. Caleb had taken the plate from my hands. Logically, I knew I had not poisoned him and had no idea the food was dangerous, yet my mind kept returning to the moment I let him have it. I thought I should have thrown the plate away as soon as I saw the shrimp. I kept imagining how differently everything might have gone if I had done that. I cried, struggled to sleep, and could barely eat. Daniel stayed close to me, assuming I was simply traumatized by watching Caleb collapse. He did not yet understand why I was so specifically afraid of his sister. I knew I had to tell him and his parents that Vanessa had brought the plate directly to me. I was worried they might think I was making another accusation in the middle of a crisis, but there was one important fact in my favor. Daniel's parents had security cameras around their property, including the backyard where the party had taken place. That evening, while Daniel's parents were still staying with us, I asked all three of them to sit down after dinner. I took a breath and explained exactly what had happened. I told them Vanessa had approached me smiling, said she wanted to make amends, and personally handed me the plate. I described seeing the shrimp, setting the food aside, and then allowing Caleb to take it after he offered. As I spoke, Daniel's confusion turned into anger. His parents exchanged a frightened look. My mother-in-law immediately suggested checking the security footage. She opened the camera application, and we reviewed the recording together. The video showed Vanessa walking toward the food, preparing or handling the plate, carrying it across the yard, and placing it in my hands. It also showed Caleb taking that same plate from me shortly before he became ill. The footage could not identify the substance in the food by itself, but it established the chain of events and made it impossible to dismiss my account as speculation. For several minutes, none of us knew what to say. Daniel was struggling to control his rage. His parents looked horrified that their daughter might have deliberately tried to harm me while I was pregnant. We still needed the hospital's findings and a proper investigation to determine what had been added to the food, but the recording was important evidence. Daniel's parents decided to preserve the footage and provide it to the police, rather than confront Vanessa privately and risk losing anything else that might matter. Caleb was the person who had actually been poisoned, so his statement and decision about cooperating would also be crucial. Once he was stable enough to speak, Daniel and his father planned to visit him, explain what the cameras had captured, and assure him that he would remain part of the family regardless of what he chose to do. I was terrified of how Caleb would react. He had nearly died after eating food meant for me, and I could not stop blaming myself even though everyone told me the responsibility belonged to the person who contaminated it. About a month later, we finally had clearer answers. After the security footage was given to the police and the medical findings confirmed poisoning, Vanessa was questioned. Faced with the evidence, she admitted what she had done, rather than continuing to deny it. She was detained, and the investigation moved forward. Caleb was shocked when Daniel told him that the plate had originally been meant for me, and that Vanessa had delivered it. Daniel urged him to cooperate fully and to pursue charges, because this was not an accident or a family misunderstanding. Once Caleb recovered, he chose to do exactly that. He also filed for divorce. Vanessa called her parents crying, begging, and demanding forgiveness. During those calls, we learned that she was pregnant too. She tried to use the pregnancy to persuade them to rescue her, telling them they should help for the sake of their future granddaughter. Her father refused to be manipulated. He told her that they had spent years softening the consequences of her behavior, and that she finally had to take responsibility for her own actions. Her mother was devastated by what was happening to her daughter, but she also understood that poisoning someone could not be excused or hidden to protect the family. The investigation found evidence that Vanessa had tampered with the meal intended for me. The case involved food tampering and offenses connected to poisoning, bodily harm, and endangering life. I avoided pretending to understand every legal detail, but the central facts were clear. She had contaminated food, deliberately handed it to me, and her husband had been injured when he ate it instead. Caleb's cooperation, the hospital results, the preserved food evidence, the camera footage, and Vanessa's own admission all supported the case. Even after confessing, Vanessa continued blaming me. She begged Caleb not to proceed and insisted that the situation was somehow my fault because I had given him the plate. Thankfully, Caleb did not accept that version of events. He understood that I had believed the only problem was shrimp and that I had no knowledge of the poison. His mind was set on ending the marriage and holding her responsible. During that period, I was also trying to protect my pregnancy and care for Ethan. Our son did not initially know what his aunt had done. Daniel and I discussed how to speak with him in a way he could understand, without frightening him. We did not want him to discover pieces of the story from relatives or grow up believing that adults should hide serious harm to preserve appearances. Eventually, we planned an age-appropriate conversation focused on safety, truth, and why Vanessa would no longer be part of our lives. My doctor scheduled frequent checkups and ultrasounds, at one point every 2 weeks, because of the stress surrounding the pregnancy and our concern for the baby. Physically, the baby continued developing well. Emotionally, I was not doing nearly as well as I pretended. I became afraid of food I had not prepared myself. I avoided meals at gatherings, restaurant dishes, and anything that had been out of my sight. I knew the fear was not rational in every situation, but after learning that someone in my own family had tried to poison me, my nervous system treated unfamiliar food as a threat. My parents became extremely protective and encouraged me to speak with a therapist before the anxiety became even more deeply rooted. Daniel supported that idea and helped me through meals when the fear became overwhelming. Recovery was not immediate. I could not simply remind myself that Vanessa was in custody and expect the panic to disappear. I had to relearn, slowly, that most food was safe, and that accepting a plate from someone I trusted did not normally place my life in danger. 8 months later, the court process had reached its conclusion. I did not attend Vanessa's hearings. Being in the same room with her would not have helped me heal, and the evidence did not require me to watch every stage in person. Daniel's parents occasionally updated us. During the proceedings, Vanessa admitted that her hostility toward me had been driven by years of jealousy. She explained that she had always imagined one of her best friends marrying Daniel. When he chose me instead, she treated me like an outsider who had stolen a future she believed she was entitled to arrange. That resentment had fueled the comments about his ex-girlfriends, the black dress at our wedding, the accusations of infidelity, and her repeated attempts to undermine our marriage. The pregnancy announcement at Daniel's birthday party had triggered her again. Vanessa had also been planning to announce her own pregnancy that day. After her miscarriage and fertility struggles, she wanted the family's attention and sympathy to center on her. When Daniel and I shared our news first, she felt that we had stolen her moment. Instead of recognizing that we did not even know she was pregnant, she allowed years of resentment and anger to turn into an act of violence. Vanessa admitted that she had mixed a small amount of rat poison into the food she handed me. She claimed she only wanted me to become sick enough to be hospitalized and never intended to kill me or harm my unborn baby. That distinction meant very little to me. No one who deliberately feeds poison to a pregnant woman can control the outcome. She also argued that she deserved a lighter punishment because she had not expected me to give the plate to Caleb, and because, in her view, I had essentially poisoned her husband. The court did not accept her attempt to transfer responsibility. The person who secretly contaminated the food was responsible for the harm that followed. Vanessa was found guilty and sentenced to prison. I will not pretend that hearing about her sentence made every fear disappear, but knowing she would be far away from my children gave me room to breathe. Caleb completed the divorce and was finally free from the marriage. Daniel and his parents made it clear that Vanessa's actions did not erase Caleb's place in the family. We continued inviting him to gatherings when he felt comfortable attending. The first time I had a real conversation with him after his recovery, I apologized repeatedly for letting him take the plate. I had rehearsed that apology in my head for months, imagining all the ways I should have acted differently. Caleb stopped me and said, plainly, that it had never been my fault. He had chosen to take food that both of us believed was merely unsuitable for me because of an allergy. Neither of us knew it had been poisoned. The only person responsible was Vanessa. Hearing that from him broke something open in me. I cried, partly from relief and partly because I had carried the guilt for so long that I no longer knew how to put it down. Over time, therapy, Daniel's support, and repeated safe experiences helped me manage the fear around food. I still paid closer attention than I had before, and I did not force myself to trust quickly, but the panic slowly stopped controlling every meal. My parents and in-laws remained close to us throughout the pregnancy. They attended appointments when needed, helped with Ethan, and made our home feel protected rather than isolated. When our baby was born, she was a healthy little girl. We had decided not to learn the sex during the pregnancy, so meeting our daughter was a joyful surprise. Her arrival brought warmth back into a period that had been dominated by fear. Ethan was delighted to become a big brother. Watching him hover near his sister, eager to help and careful with her, reminded me that our family was not defined by what Vanessa had tried to do. Daniel and I did eventually tell Ethan the truth in terms he could understand. We explained that his aunt had made a dangerous choice, that adults are responsible for the harm they cause, and that keeping distance from someone can be necessary even when that person is family. We did not burden him with every detail, but we refused to teach him that loyalty means ignoring danger. Our relationship with Vanessa is over. Her parents love their daughter, but they no longer deny what she did or pressure us to forgive her. Caleb is rebuilding his life, and when he joins family events, we are grateful he survived. Daniel and I are raising our son and daughter with much firmer boundaries than we once had. For years, I believed patience and politeness might eventually convince Vanessa to accept me. I kept giving her another opportunity because I did not want to be blamed for dividing the family. What I finally understood is that boundaries do not create the danger. They reveal who refuses to respect it. Vanessa wanted control over Daniel's life, and when she could not have it, she escalated from insults to sabotage and finally to an act that could have killed me and my child. She lost her freedom and her marriage because of choices she made. I did not poison Caleb, steal her announcement, or take her brother away. I married a man who chose me, built a family with him, and survive the consequences of someone else's obsession. Today, the people I love are safe, my daughter is healthy, and our home is peaceful. That is the ending Vanessa tried to take from us, and it is the life we are determined to protect.